work hours. So you come every summer and
Where do you like things? You kind of like
all coast. Yeah, might be there.
So what's the D stand for, Josh?
Just a little.
Daniel.
Dan?
He went there on his own.
That's great.
Thank you. Oh, thanks.
An agenda.
I got one here, though, because I'll be taking meds underneath the side. Let's turn your PDF into a document so I can edit.
But it's basically just law practice.
Great, well, I'll call this meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. Why don't we start with the approval of the minutes?
The minutes,
You would circulate.
you circulate them.
Yeah, like so.
I didn't read them, so.
I thought I sent them all out. Did everybody get them?
Got it.
Good. Yeah, I feel badly because you don't mind, I don't know if you want to sign that or not, but I feel badly because I couldn't figure out how to do the BCC thing in this little computer here. So I sent you all open addresses, which is kind of bad policy, but nobody complained or showed up at my door, so. No, if anybody minds, let me know.
I don't mind.
Okay. Good.
Great. Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, seconded. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Okay, great. So correspondence with LCI. So we have an okay from Alan at LCI to come to our meeting on April 2nd. So we will be we'll be hearing from him then. And Islesboro is happy to send someone or do a video chat, but they want to first know the kind of questions that we have so they can send the appropriate person. So why don't we start with looking at the presentation, or talking about the presentation from LCI. Did all of you get a chance to watch the video?
I did.
It was very
The actual numbers didn't
informative.
really start until a good deal of fluff later, for sure.
Yeah, lots of that.
A lot of bad humor, but we won't say that.
When they pulled out the Jefferson map, I was like, fuck.
Yeah.
But
So, what did you guys think about the presentation?
I thought they had a pretty nice plan to go forward with regards to getting the grant, and wanting assistance or collaboration from Lincolnville to do that. And that was the source to really pay for their 4-year plan to roll out the remaining, probably about third of fiber cable to the town. So I thought that was a great proposal that didn't cost Lincolnville anything. And to me, it just came down to, do you want to pay for it faster? You know, if you can come up with more money, then we can do it quicker.
And then they wouldn't mind saving a little bit of money if they were to get our buy-in to get the main connect money as well.
well, and that was where I found the presentation to be lacking, were all the numbers that I was kind of interested in seeing, which were like maybe a little bit of what their profit is, what they're making, because what's happening is that in essence we're subsidizing them in two ways. We're going to do petition work on their behalf so that they can collect the Connect Me grant, which is beneficial to their bottom line. But we're also giving them a guaranteed number of subscribers that we're paying at a regular rate. So again, I'm not saying no to anything, but I really want all this to be on the table so we can look at it, because those things are not hidden. I mean, those of us who run businesses here, I know, and you have to buy large amounts of equipment you used to do farming, right? And other things, or am I remembering wrong?
What I used to, yeah.
Yeah, so you have these capital investments, and it's extremely rare that you get to pass that on, especially with some sort of markup to your clients. It's something that you have to do and pay off over time. So I think that if we're going to be giving them a guaranteed subscriber rate, which is at a profit to them, let's not be fooled, that's a retail market rate. On top of that, we're doing legwork and spending man hours and power to guarantee them. It's not a lot of money, but he was talking about $25,000 a year, maybe minimally, from the Connect Me package. So again, we're providing them with a good amount of money for the courtesy of them providing us a service that then they're making money off of. So what I want to see is, and I saw the breakdown of the numbers, it's roughly $650,000 for the 25 point something miles, including their server upgrade. So like what I'm curious about is, for the need of this town, what kind of server would we need and how much does that cost? Looking at what the mileage is to cover the whole town or the existing people, because the numbers I saw that they were giving kind of, they weren't corresponding with each other. So like on one hand he would say there's, and forgive me, it's approximately 430 something houses that currently have fiber optic, but then there's 537 other houses that opted not to, or for whatever reason. I'm one of them. I've asked about it and never been offered. And then there's another number of 330 something that's going to be added just by putting in these mileage. So I'm interested to see how all that fits together into a cohesive picture, because while I'm not trying to say he was being deceptive in any way, but there's a lot of talking around things without actually getting to like the skinny of what's going on. And so forgive me for dominating right now, but those are the things that I want to be addressed and want to be able to look at and present to the board and to the voters, because to me, and maybe not to anyone else, that's really where my interest lies. Because how much of a subsidy are we going to be giving for something that we have to pay for and are going to pay for, versus what are the other routes that we can look at, especially if it's just 25.1 miles, and if it really is, $650,000, which is not a lot of money, and if you can take away $25,000, $50,000 from that, where does that leave us? What would a bond cost? What would that be effect on taxes if we were able to guarantee that and not have to beg a company to do something for us and giving us numbers that are inflated? We know how many houses. We wouldn't just say, oh, this purple line has X amount, even though they don't have it, in a larger amount that are already served. So, sorry, but that's
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, in LCI's defense, or Lincoln Telephone's defense, he did mention two things that if we worked with him, plums we might get, if we're good.
Yeah.
Subsidies and maybe specialized services. He mentioned telemedicine. I don't know how the latter would be how they would tweak it to us. I have no idea how that would work, or if that's really how much of a plum that is.
Yeah, I am kind of with you. I was very impressed, not by their presentation, but by what they've already done and the resources they have. And so what struck me was, it's good for us to look at other option, the Owlsboro option or whatever, but we already have the obvious option right in front of us. And the question is how to negotiate the right deal. What I heard is they're going to do this anyways over time. We could put in as much or as little money as possible. He mentioned that they had some type of federal funding that's available right now, and he also mentioned a TIF, and I didn't understand how a TIF would fit into this tax increment financing. And then of course you had the Connect Me thing. So when I watched this, I was like, I'm kind of surprised that the selectmen didn't move right into getting the funding effort with Connect Me happening right away, and then kind of get ahead of the curve, because all these other communities are going for that right now as well.
Right.
But I think it's a great resource that we have right in front of us. I think we have to be strategic in how we negotiate with them, which is somewhat what you're saying.
I was also impressed by the presentation. It seems to me essentially we're talking about running fiber optic to about 340 homes. I happen to live in one of those homes, and was told that if I wanted to draw myself, it was $20,000. So my selfish motivation is there some way that we can deal with what's in front of us and have that happen? It struck me as that they would be bearing the major portion of the cost. I'm just not sure, sort of being a newbie here, what the alternative is. It does strike me as kind of diseconomic to consider bearing this cost ourselves in exchange for some form of future ownership interest. It strikes me that we're basically talking about their infrastructure cost. They're being able to get a portion of that cost from the state of Maine, and perhaps a portion of that cost from the town if we want to do it more quickly. I'm curious as to what more you would like to have in terms of essentially a spreadsheet on their per unit profitability? I mean, how would that affect our decision making?
Well, we are a customer and we have leverage and we should act that way, and we don't have to give our business to anyone. And we are allowing them to get grants that prevent them from using their own capital and letting their money sit in banks and to collect interest or to use it for other reasons. And I just think that as an entity, as a town, that we should also be looking in our best interest. And again, this is something that we're going to be paying regardless. We're going to be paying subscriptions for this. And they've already said that they're perfectly happy to let us pay what are high rates for low returns until they come along and decide to make these upgrades. So yeah, I would like to know, I'd like to see the numbers again of adding together the Connect Me money, what we'd be paying in subscription fees, and anything else that we would be providing to this private corporation that helps them to make money, for sure, because I think those things should be discounted. I mean, that's just the way business is done. It should be done bilaterally and not unilaterally, and I think that this seems to be a very unilateral type process because they're presenting something to us to accept or not. It's not quite an ultimatum, but when there's negotiations going on and we can bring numbers to them and say, look, if you want to work with us, these are the benefits to you, and we would like to see some benefits as well. I mean, I think that that's, if you don't ask for that, then that's not gonna happen, and so.
And the benefit would be a guaranteed lower per unit cost?
Yeah, it
over a
could be,
period of
there
time?
could be things about maintenance that we don't know. There's a lot of things. We could have, this is where talking to Islesboro or private contractors or anything, because I'm not an expert on the infrastructure of it, but definitely if we can negotiate our way into any kind of better service or lower cost, I mean, I think that should be attempted for sure.
I mean, having done a little bit of negotiation over 40 years, usually you negotiate when you have an alternate bidder.
But our alternate bidder is inaction.
And
Because that's the thing, is that they wouldn't be proposing this us if it wasn't beneficial for them. And I listen to the whole package, and I also sell for a living, and I know what I'm being sold to, and he was easing us into a choice that was beneficial to them. So to me, that's where the bargaining chips come in. And it was laid out to us. You can help us do this or not, and it's gonna take X amount of time regardless. So I don't feel any pressure because I'm gonna be stuck with the same service no matter what. And if they wanna get it done quicker and they wanna make a little more money by getting grants or getting help from us, then like I said, I would like for some kind of benefit to come to the town.
But isn't there also I think that the interested group, which I'm a member, are those who don't currently have service or have inadequate service and would like to get it sooner. And if the choice is not to get the service in order for some conjectural benefit in the future, I guess I'm not sure how
The
that
service
works
is
out.
coming. They've already told us that. We know in 4 years it's gonna be there whether we do anything or not. That was made
Well,
perfectly
four
clear.
years, I think, was with the grant money. So if they got what they wanted, it would take
Oh,
4 years.
no, he said privately, they have plans and that if we did nothing, then in 4 years, all these households would have fiber optic anyway, which I thought was a really important part of it. So that's for me where I see and it's gonna take them time to build no matter what. So it's not gonna be instant, like he said. I forget the quote, he said, somebody's gonna be number 1, somebody's gonna be house number 338, and that's gonna be the same no matter what. So we can either choose to not try and leverage something beneficial for the town, or we can try. I don't think that that's gonna affect how anything plays out, because they're a business that's growing very rapidly, and this is part of their plan.
So in their presentation, I should have made a copy for everyone. I apologize. These are the slides, and under the 4-year build out project funding mix, it was town 0, Connect Me 25,000, which is really not that much compared to 655,000, and then LTC. I don't know what that is because I haven't watched this since November, but that's 138,000.
Yeah, that's them.
That's their
That's them,
annual
okay.
contribution.
That'd be,
Okay.
one thing about this thing is you couldn't see the slide watching on TV. I'd love
Yeah.
to see those
Let
slides.
me just pass this around.
Yeah,
That'd be good if we could get, yeah.
We'd like to-
Is there a way-
I was using my imagination.
Yeah.
You kept pointing at things and you're like,
I listened to it on my
So,
phone
Josh,
and
is there
then
any
looked at
way,
the slides
we
on
could
my
get-
computer.
Each one of us could get a copy of it?
Absolutely,
Back
I
and
will,
forth?
I will certainly,
That would
scan that and
would
send
be
that
helpful,
around to
yeah.
That'd be great.
everyone, so you have that.
Yeah, thanks.
So let me answer your question first regarding why the select board didn't take action. There were a few concerns about, well, first of all, not knowing what the town wanted. Does the town want us to jump in and recommend spending, I think it's $100,000, or does the town want us to wait 4 years and let them do it themselves? And especially because it's a private company and a lot of people in Lincolnville have had bad experiences with their DSL. I mean, it's kind of universal. We didn't want to just jump in and say we want to help this company that a lot of people have had bad experiences with. And so that's why the committee was formed, so we could reach out to the town and see what the town wanted. So personally, since I have fiber optic, perhaps that skews my thinking on this, but right now, with everything that I've seen, I think it makes sense just to wait 4 years and let them build it out. But if you don't have fiber optic and you really could use it now, which everyone could use it now, then that may seem like an eternity. And I don't see any harm in asking them for what you're asking for. I don't think they're going to give us any of that
Of course not.
because they're working with cities and towns across the whole state. Who are we? But we should ask.
But the point that I didn't understand, the hesitation about it, I heard him saying, if you help the company get the petition in so that they can get the Connect Me in grant, at a minimum, that will happen, and that'll speed up the 4-year process, even if we put no money in. He
Mhm.
also pitched that if we put in money, it'll make us look more credible.
Yeah.
If you don't got any money,
Mhm.
that part is like the no-brainer to me, that we would want to at least speed it up somewhat
Right.
by taking advantage of funds from the state of Maine.
And is there a guarantee they'll cover all the homes?
The company,
Yeah.
their word.
No, I mean, I assume there'd be a contract if we were gonna co-fund, but I mean, essentially sitting here for 4 years, maybe it'll happen in 4 years. They said it's their goal to do it in 4 years.
Well, and that's why I had
There's no
problems
promise,
with
yeah.
believing, not believing, but with what they presented as far as the coverage, when you have that split of the 400 something versus the 500 something, they were claiming that the 530 something were people that could have access to it but are choosing not to. And I'm sorry, but that just doesn't seem plausible to me.
Well, I do know that, yeah, there were a lot of very
And-
broad things.
Well, and like you said, it would be $20,000 to connect. He was giving figures of $1,000 per household, and then he was giving, but then they could knock it down to $500 per household. So
Right.
I'd really like to know, you know,
Yeah,
like,
just to clarify the
Yeah.
situation, our home is located well off the road, and they'd have to string wire
yeah.
down the road and put up,
Yeah, so there are costs outside of,
the $1,000 is
What they
if
do.
they have a coiled wire outside your door, it's $1,000 to turn you on. That's.
if you can get it off the pole, it's cheap. I was
Yeah.
330
Yeah.
feet from the pole, and I
Yeah.
had to dig a trench 330 feet and then lay conduit.
Yeah.
And then, so there's a lot of expense that goes into the ability to provide that infrastructure.
Yeah.
That's not their part at all.
So I guess, I certainly am not enthusiastic about the town spending money incrementally to do this. And certainly 4 years is a reasonable, horizon. I'm not convinced that it doesn't make sense to cooperate with them in terms of trying to get some extra money, if that can expedite, if it's the state's money, because that money's already been paid out of our taxes. And I assume that if we had a relationship with them, then there'd be a signed piece of paper saying that they would deliver this to the 338 homes by the end of 4 years, which would be something we don't have now. I mean, that's the other question. And again, if there was like another overbuilder, if there was another company that was looking to pick up these homes, I'd say that, let's go ahead and have the negotiation. I'm not sure who else there is to do this, and maybe it's just my ignorance. Is there someone else who's gonna overbuild?
that I know of.
Yeah, that's where there's no competition for them right now, so it's tough to bargain with somebody
That's where
when
I think we really need to
there
look,
isn't the
to
alternative.
make sure there isn't some kind of other alternative, because all I ever hear on the bulletin board and from people is that they don't want a monopoly and they want choices. That's what I hear,
That would be nice.
yeah.
Well,
I don't know how practical it is, but that's what I hear all the time.
You know, it's having spent a lot of time in the cable business, competition doesn't work very well when you're laying infrastructure. You really have to have an incentive for someone to come in, and if you have a situation like in Lincolnville, where you're gonna have at least a third of the homes already tied up to this particular company, and another third of the homes are not interested, what's the incentive for someone to come and overbuild for 338 units? I just don't see what the alternative is. I would 4 years is great if we can get a commitment for it. 4 years sounds like a fine period of time to have it happen. What are we being asked to do in exchange for that? I guess it's contribute towards a pitch for Connect Maine.
Which is mostly getting lots of signatures.
Yeah, they said you need 75% of your voters.
85% of
Yeah,
the
it's
houses
pretty
that are
big now.
proposed.
Wow, that was a
And
high
fif-
number.
and 50% pre-sale allocation.
Yeah.
So what, how many?
And 50% pre-sale
It was
applications.
85% of homes that were proposed to be receiving the service.
Yeah, they need 85% community support.
well, it seems as if there might be kind of a middle ground here, because it sounds as if a lot of the discussion is going towards, it's not worth going all in or working with LTI, because it's gonna happen in 4 years and we're fine. But we're kind of bound by a charge to find out if that's what the town wants,
Right.
not what we.
Exactly, and I thought we were
Yeah.
kind of trying to decide what questions to be asking it, not so much as deciding.
Oh, I mean, we're having a preliminary,
Yeah.
discussion.
Yeah.
Well, I would think we might be able to go, by doing the legwork and trying to poll the town, see what their feelings are. We're not buying into, we're working with Lincolnville Telephone, as far as I know, along with their dreams. But we may find out that we're a passionate minority in the town, and everybody wants it real bad, and they wanted it yesterday.
Mhm.
And
Could be.
could be. I'm fine with my dinky DSL, works for me, but, my livelihood or nothing else depends upon it.
Well, I mean, it's an interesting question as to whether broadband service is something equivalent to electricity and water
That's true.
in this day and age, especially when we're suddenly going to discover that no one's going to school, that no one's
Yeah.
working, and that everyone is going to have to operate remotely for the foreseeable future.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
No end in sight.
we're talking a year, 18 months,
Yeah.
when you're gonna be relying on either DSL or, I mean, I think that there's something to be said about the growing necessity of a broadband connection, even though apparently half the population of the town that's passed doesn't feel it's necessary. I mean, those are all personal economic decisions. But
Well-
if it were electricity, I don't think this would be, I don't think we'd be having any question about going and getting it done as quickly as possible.
So maybe we should be focusing tonight on what our questions are for them versus, the ultimate decision, which.
Yeah, we're not making that.
No,
Yeah.
but tonight we're getting into the which way do you go,
Yeah.
which I agree with you is really down the road.
Premature, yeah.
Okay, so questions.
I wanted
So
to,
we got your question.
they mentioned, something about subsidized costs. I wanted to understand what the potential is for getting costs down.
Yeah.
And getting more people on, on the.
Just out of curiosity, this map is almost 2 years old. Have things changed since June of 2019? Or I guess it's a year old.
Let's ask. Yeah. Let's see if
But
they
it's
can bring-
2008, it's 2018, so it's not a very current map.
Well, just to be, that's the Google map satellite.
That's the overlay, that's the
Yes.
basis for the overlay?
Yeah, so the overlay
That's wrong.
could be pretty recent, but let's ask them to bring their
So you think this was as of the presentation, you think in November?
That's what I think.
Yeah, okay.
They had a sales pitch 2 years ago at Graffram Brothers in Rockport, and they had a interactive map that you could zoom in and see street level, which was very, very cool. And I don't know why they don't have that on their website. But yeah, let's make sure that they bring an up-to-date map, and maybe they can even bring it on a computer so we can see that street
Using to
level.
identify the 338 homes.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'd be interested to know what their definition, or if there is a definition of what availability means. That is, if it's going down the street and it's still a quarter mile away from me, my house,
Right.
does that mean they consider me having the option to get, I don't understand.
Right, that's.
I
Yeah,
kind of
I
would
know
say-
that's those 500 and whatever homes that choose.
No, yeah,
So that's
apparently.
exactly, I
Right.
would love to know what
Oh,
they're
Oh,
at.
what does that mean?
Right,
Oh, you add that,
And why
and
is
then
it
the
so
300 and
big?
something.
Right, well, that's what I would like to
Think
know,
about
how are
900
they, I
people
mean,
combined, 900 households.
why aren't those 578
Right.
people?
Yeah.
Do they know that they have fiber, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know, well, as a matter of fact, when I go to their website and click in, hey, you have fiber optics or whatnot, it says, no, you're consigned to DSL. They don't say sorry, but that's
Yeah,
what they
right.
let me know. And then I look down my road, way down on 50, up to 52, and I see the loop, you know?
Right.
So I bet you I could tap into that sucker somehow, but does that mean I'm allowed to,
Mhm.
or by their definition, or no?
Right.
And so that's why it's important for us to, so something else about this committee, I think, is getting the word out to those homes that do have access. And if it's a phone call or an email, probably not knocking on the doors anymore, but reach out somehow and let them know you actually have access. But I do think because of your experience, maybe their website is not accurate, and to ask them if they can give us, as you said, that list of all those homes and the addresses, so we actually know what.
Because I
Because-
called and tried the office to find out,
Yeah.
and, well, yeah, it's just, yeah, I'd also like to know and try and have confidence that they're gonna do what they say, because I've been paying, like, we pay the same amount for DSL as for fiber optic, and
What do
we're
you pay?
getting, I pay, it's $100 forced bundle with the telephone and the internet, so,
Bare minimum.
yep, and so I get 5 to 7 Mbps usually.
Down.
I'm lucky. Yeah.
Okay.
And so that to me also is like, so, yeah, that also goes into cost. Like, they're gonna renovate all these lines but not up their subscription. Like, there's, sorry. I'm not gonna go off again on it, but that's why it's not just so cut and dry as a monopoly or not, and like, they wouldn't be putting this money in if it wasn't there, and we just saw, there's 900 households that aren't currently getting, you multiply that out by $60 a month, that's a lot of money. So it just, yeah.
Josh, I got a question for you. He mentioned, they have contracts with Bodenham, Alna, and Jefferson. Could David Kinney get us 3 copies of those contracts? I'd love to see those, to see what the deal is at those 3 towns.
Let's ask. Yeah.
Struck, because if we, it's back to understanding what they're doing out there. If we had a better understanding of the various deals they put together, it sounds like, Bodenham put in a whole bunch of money, $355,000, but Alna and Jefferson only put in, $25,000 or $18,000. I'd be curious to see, what one town got for $355,000 versus $18,000.
They may just come back and say they're confidential.
Yeah.
But it's not, it's a public document on
Public
the town
document,
side.
okay.
So why can't we get it from the town?
And Islesboro,
Yeah.
that's also
We'll
something
get
good to ask, is that, pre them deciding to go on their own, that they also had talks with the Lincolnville company.
Oh, I'm sure they did.
And if there were things brought to the table, if there was any movement, because I'm sure, it's a whole sector for them, they probably didn't wanna lose, or I don't know, but I think that would be a good question to ask them, if that played into it, if there was any kind of, if there was anything offered or flexibility.
And I guess the other thing is, Josh, you were saying a lot of people were unhappy with them. I've been unhappy with them. So how do we get to the bottom of that? Like, how do we get better service? Not just the fiber optics, how do we get a more responsive provider? or maybe they are responsive and.
Well, and if you've been paying a contract for a service for years that you haven't been receiving, you know, but they've been receiving their full amount for it, that's also the disturbing part. And I don't, well, it's maybe going too far, but the Maine State Attorney General's office has a great consumer advocacy office as well. I mean, it doesn't mean it's anything criminal, but they're really good with looking out for it. And I mean, as you talked about contracts, you know, that is a contract, and if you're only delivering me this minimal amount, but I'm paying you the full amount, and this is years and years and years of this, I mean, I feel like that's under providing, and, you know, they've been making money on something that they haven't been delivering.
I'm not sure I understand what they have.
Yeah, what haven't they delivered?
Oh, well, they say a certain speed that they're gonna deliver to your household, and it's not even a half of that.
I think they
Yeah,
weasel, I
sorry.
think they weasel that by saying
Yeah,
up to,
Terrible service too.
Yeah.
up to.
I know, but it's
10
really
megs,
like,
6, 7, 8.
it's pretty terrible.
And I think that's industry standard, that weaseling is industry standard.
Well, we can certainly ask them how, for people who
Yeah.
have DSL right now in Lincolnville, how will you make it better? Because before we get, you know, hundreds of signatures from people, we're gonna need some assurances from them that they're going to improve
Yeah, but
while they're waiting.
what I kind of gathered from the description was that when you have DSL, it's a zero-sum game in terms of the actual amount of information that can be passed over the line. And during very busy parts of the day, everybody's speed goes
I
down.
believe that was in household he was referring to, but I could
In-household,
totally
yeah.
be
But
wrong.
I'll give an example. For 2 years, I chased them around, and I have DSL
Yeah,
with no luck. And I tried 5 or 6 things. I finally went to Best Buy. The guy came down, he boosted it, it was fine, you know? And so why didn't, you know, at the front end, why couldn't they match the services that Best Buy did to provide some obvious input to help with the problem? And maybe I'm unique. in
it might have been just your in-house router.
Yeah, I mean,
Right, but
it's tough to draw the line
They
of what,
didn't even suggest that.
what
just
they
kinda,
can
you know.
do.
Oh yeah,
what they can't
we had
do.
the same circumstance.
Yeah.
I kept losing all my connections, and then we put in a new router, and the speed went up to, you know, something that's reasonable if you're just using, you know, data. The allure, of course, of the fiber optic is that it's the gold standard. And I guess the question is, you know, I really think it's right to take a look at these contracts of the towns that have gone elsewhere and done other things, or have, just to see what else there is out there. It does strike me, though, that if we have half the town, more than half the town already getting some kind of service or passage by fiber optic, that it's probably not gonna be economic for the town to go ahead and build the rest of it.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like that ship has sailed. To build out a whole network just for a third of the town, you know, I don't. But we're gonna ask those questions about this room and find out.
Well, the charge does require that, or ask us to look at available options.
Yeah.
Municipal broadband is one, so we at least have to look at it.
Yeah, and we're going to.
Okay.
Yeah, certainly.
And in terms of that inquiry, I guess there'd been some discussion earlier about existing third-party consultants or providers that would perhaps come in and pitch us. Is that a possibility? Are there, if we're looking at an alternative, obviously there was some consultant that was utilized, you know, for some of these other projects. Should they come in and pitch us as well? I mean, if that's, it would be great. Again,
Well, Alsboro would be great to see, that's perfect for them to ask, hey, did you have bidders, did you go through a process, are there contractors you can recommend for us just to talk to, just to see, you know, they out of state, or they, yeah, I think for sure.
They did have bidders,
Yeah, I'm sure they did,
Yeah.
I'm sure they did, so that would be great for us to get that information from them, I mean, that's,
if we can, I would certainly think that would be a very helpful idea in
Yeah.
terms of our charge, so that we could come back at the end of the process and say, you know, we looked at what a bunch of different people did, and we got some kind of a basic analysis in terms of the feasibility for us. I mean, I would certainly agree that if we have a history of others getting into the negotiation you're talking about, it would be better position to negotiate ourselves. And if there, I think people would like to, if there are people out there who can sell us in terms of a consultancy relationship, we should have that, listen to them as well. It doesn't mean we should put off having the conversations with Lincolnville.
Mm-hmm.
But before I think we finish our charge, we should probably do the other thing as well.
Well, I don't know if there's gonna be any funding to hire a consultant. But yeah, let's first talk with LCI, talk with Islesboro, see what they say about who they worked with, and that process of choosing who to build it out, and then we can, see if we still need one.
Although I just come back, sitting on our fannies for 4 years and having it happen is not the worst outcome if we know that's actually going to be the result.
Mm-hmm.
It would be nice to know if at 4 years and 1 day, it's done. But,
And they may tell us that if we help them get signatures and secure that grant, then yes, here's a signed document saying 4 years and 1 day we'll have it all laid out.
Josh, one other question is, the selectmen talked at all to the Hope selectmen? I know they're going through the same process. I wonder if we could speed it up for both towns, if Hope and Lincolnville kind of work together to really deliver some customer base to them. Is there any conversation?
We haven't talked with them. I actually think we should almost view them as a competitor.
Could be, yeah.
Because they can only move as fast as they can.
And they're behind us right now. They haven't formed the committee yet.
Right. So, yeah, that's kind of how I'm seeing it.
Well, excuse me, I'm sorry. No, I was gonna say, one town that I would like to, if we're gonna reach out to towns, I'd kind of like to talk with somebody from Rockport, to see what their experiences were. I mean, I look at Islesboro as a success, Rockport, in terms of municipal broadband.
Mm-hmm.
Islesboro succeeded, Rockport failed. And Rockport failed spectacularly at a town meeting within weeks, where Islesboro was given the go-ahead, said, hey, what do you need? And while Islesboro, just the same old, individual stood up and said, hey, it's gonna raise my taxes. And I'd like to hear why they went down, as it were, and when Islesboro succeeded.
Well, Hillsboro's tax base is still.
Oh, I know it's apples oranges. I know that. Yeah. Rockport is not Islesboro, and vice versa. But still, I think if we were to try to present that as an option, municipal broadband, we'd have to. You have to be honest and say, hey, there are a lot of people who don't want to pay for it.
Yeah.
And who can't pay for it, regardless of what because bandwidth. Who cares? For some people, it's who cares. For some people, it's life, but others, it's not.
Okay.
Well, Rockport has Time Warner, right?
They do. I think.
Do.
I mean, LCI goes through Rockport now too.
But yeah, I just referred to like a municipal broadband.
Yeah.
Can you or someone give the basic history of Rockport? Their rough history of
Well, I was just looking at this thing, and there's a couple sites on municipal broadband, big cheerleader boosters, clearinghouse for information and whatnot, and they use Islesboro and Rockport as two extreme examples.
Okay.
And I just I was reading some old Village Soup articles through them, and the town meeting where Rockport, where they did not get the $300,000 to have a design and engineering study on whatnot to keep it going. It was just your classic town meeting. People stood up and said, "What the hell, man?" That type of thing.
300,000 for the design
they
engineering.
needed design engineering. I think they had reached gone over hurdle 1, and were able to bring it to town meeting. But I think they floated. Don't know if they floated a bond or got one approved before that. But what they needed to get the money to keep going, they couldn't.
Well, but that's also so different because if we had Spectrum or Time Warner in here, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Well, exactly. They have competition and we don't.
Well, they
So
have
they have
access. We
options
don't have
to
any.
choose
Yeah,
that we
and that's
don't.
the same with Islesboro. Rockport. I believe that's also why they failed. But it's just for us, we just have nothing. So that's really why it's. It's just.
And Islesboro basically had nothing.
Exactly, and then we're gonna have. It's different. If I could have Spectrum, that's like 25. That is the minimum standard or whatever, and that I probably could deal with. But we don't have, like I said, a third of that. So.
But I was respectfully disagreeing that I think there's a similar element of the demographics, population is very much, is similar in the sense that there's a sizable portion of the population, especially who show up at town meeting and who have voices, who can say, no, this is gonna cost me money.
Right.
You know, I think we have those same people that Rockport has, you know?
And that's
Yeah.
why.
Even though there are different situations.
Yeah.
But I agree with you, Art. We have to be strategic
Yeah.
so that it's fair to the people who have it,
Yeah.
and it's fair to the people who don't, and it's gonna be a very modest financial package, cause it's not gonna fly otherwise.
I would think so,
Right.
yeah, so, yeah, it'd be nice if we could, get a handle on what reasonable cost is,
Yeah.
you know.
So when was this presentation again?
This was November 28th, November 12th, I think November 12th. Something like that.
And they're
So I
coming
wonder if
in
they've
at-
made a little bit of progress since they're
You
gonna
would
do it in
think.
4 years anyways.
Right.
So I wonder, you know, what progress have they made
Yeah,
even in that
it's been
short
4
time?
months.
Haven't been to my house. They're coming in April 2nd.
Yes. Yeah, just them, and then Lincolnville, and then Islesboro at a future date. Hopefully, the meeting after that. Any other questions that we want to ask LCI?
Well, just a question, I guess, for the group, my ignorance. In the presentation, they talked about, you know, a March and a May deadline.
Yeah.
I assume that given our own schedule, neither of those is relevant at this point.
It seems like that.
I mean, March has come and gone, they're pretty much,
Yeah.
right? And I guess to get something together by May is not gonna be practical if our,
And were those the only 2 grants for this year?
I
Is that
thought
what
that
you
that there'd been no money,
So they
I think
said
that's what's-
four available each year, because
Right.
last year they had gotten 2 of the 4.
Yeah, so
I believe.
I assume there'd be a couple more in the fall, but that's just kind of the way I read his
Hmm.
feel.
I mean, if, you know, part of this is the grant, which I guess is an open question about whether we get it or not. And the next round is in the autumn, we're already a year into our 4 years in terms of timing. I'm just wondering about, you know, is there a, maybe we should try to find out when the next opportunity would be to get somebody from the state and how that would fit in.
So let's ask them, when is the actual drop dead date for
Yeah.
for the next grant?
I looked online, I thought I saw it.
Because presumably we'd have to, you know, have a petition and signatures, right?
Well, you have to have a town meeting to approve spending
Right.
money.
Well, and I would.
Well, just keep in mind, this doesn't, I don't think what they need involves a town meeting.
If we're gonna spend money.
Like, if we're gonna spend money, of course.
Certainly.
But to quickly get signatures and commitments from people, I mean, I think we could actually move quickly. I don't know how the coronavirus is gonna affect that. I mean, I'm thinking about the 2020 census, right? Who's gonna open the door to a stranger right now, or in 2 weeks? You know,
That's a good point.
even my nomination papers, I'm
Open the
like
door.
trying to hurry up and get that done.
I think that has the same, you know, chance of success and time of success as the NHL season, which was just canceled.
So when they talk about the 4-year plan, do they actually have that on paper, so we could actually look at what the 4-year plan is as
That's a
far
great
as?
Let's ask. Yeah.
What
let
is
me
the
ask
plan?
that. That's-
Right.
Show us.
That's a great idea. That's a great question.
Where's my house on that plan?
And I also, I mean, maybe one of you guys can do this for me and then we can avert this, but I need clarification on the whole timeline, because I could swear that he said even with getting the Connect Me grant, that it was gonna be 4 years, and then there was a separate 2-year payment plan, because those numbers were vastly different. We were talking about $375,000 per year on their part, and then I believe that there was some, that's maybe where the TIF money was coming in from the town. So I only thought that there was gonna be, an expedited move towards installing those houses if we went to that 2-year payment plan, which had some different terms to it. And again,
I
that's
heard the
forgive me
same thing.
because
I heard the
I
same
just
thing.
I need clarification, because it confused me a little bit. It didn't seem like very clarifying. So.
Okay.
Could we have the engineer come too? Because you couldn't hear what the guy over here was saying.
Oh, you can.
The guy that was sitting there,
Yeah.
I couldn't hear. Could you guys pick up what
I
he was
could hear
saying?
you.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
He was the technical guy, so we missed that
We
part.
kind of need both.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, great. I hope you can read that. I can't read that.
Oh, no one but myself. It's getting harder and harder every year. That's why it's very important to have a pen that kind of moves with this freely. I'm not doing much work anymore.
Great. Any other questions before we move on?
And just to come back around to Islesboro, so what we said to Islesboro was, what was your process, who did you talk to, who were the other potential providers? You know, why did you decide to do what you did, those types of questions?
Yeah. I think I sent the list of questions that David Kinney came up with.
Yeah, you did.
Do we know what the Islesboro fees are for the users?
It's like $35 a month.
Is it
$35 or $40. It's ridiculous.
For fiber optic, because it's their own, they just,
But they spent a gigantic amount of money.
But they had to pay $3.5 million or something.
Right.
all right, yeah, sure.
So the good news, it's only $35.
It's a long way, it's a long time to earn that back,
Taxes.
yeah, get that back.
Well, if you go on Town of Islesboro's website, because they administer the bookkeeping end of it, the installation end of it, they have a pretty good FAQ section. And I think a lot of these questions, not all of them,
Okay.
are answered.
I'll send that link.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's move on to the review of questions for Islesboro regarding their broadband. So the questions that we have right now, and this is, I think we don't have to, this isn't that pressing because we're not going to meet with them on the 2nd, but it's more important, I think, that we have these questions beforehand so they know who to send us. So what level of service did the community have before? What options to provide better service were explored? Why did the town decide to do what it did? What did you do and what do you have for infrastructure? How long did the project take from conception to operation? Who did it for you, consultants, contractors, etc.? What does everyone now have available for service? And then what did it cost to build? What does it cost to operate? What are user fees, which I think is $35, $40. What are other revenue streams? And finally, if you had to do it again, would you do anything differently? I can't think of any other questions.
Did they talk to Lincolnville or not? Did they interface with them?
Okay.
And were there other providers like Lincolnville Tel that they could share with us?
Okay. That's a good one. Any other questions?
Well, I'd kind of like to see, maybe they would be willing to address the Rockport question. Why do you think you succeeded when Rockport failed?
Yeah, okay.
And they'd probably give the same answer. We have a lot of money, they don't.
Yeah. Why? I wonder why Rockport proposed that when they had other choices available.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, how they got involved initially, or why.
We could definitely get one of the Rockport.
When did they do that? When was that?
It was 2016 and they're still doing it as far as I know. If you look at their meeting, their minutes for select board meetings, a section comes out educating the public about broadband or municipal broadband.
So it's still being pushed.
Yeah,
as an idea.
yeah. So it sounds as if they've kind of gone into education mode. Now they're trying to convince people it's not such a bad idea, really, and they'll forget about what they did in 2016. But that was 2016 at the town meeting where I think it all kind of died,
Okay.
as far as I can figure out. Yeah.
Why don't we have somebody from Rockport come to the same meeting as somebody from Islesboro?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Because that's probably not a whole meeting for either one of them.
Yeah, and they're not competitors, so.
No. I can't come up with a name right now, but there's someone who was on the selectmen during that time period who
Jeff Marker?
yes.
Okay.
That's what I was thinking of having.
Okay.
He would come in heartbeat, right?
Yeah, I'm sure he would.
Yeah.
He loves to.
Is he
Yeah.
back on the select board?
He's been on and off forever, right?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't follow Rockport too carefully.
I'm glad, once you pick that date, I'll be glad to give him a call.
Okay. That's great. Did Camden ever pursue municipal broadband? I've only heard of Rockport, but
I've been living in Lincolnville so long, I didn't know people had choices. You know, you just gotta take what they give you. You know.
Now, are we positive that LCI is the only one that's capable in Lincolnville currently of providing 25 down and 3 up?
No.
The other technologies that are available, like a HughesNet and a Red Zone, aren't capable of those levels of service.
Okay.
They can get close to them, but not those specific levels.
Yeah, but they do qualify the 25.3 for from the FCC. As far as the FCC is concerned, they qualify. That's
Was
what
it
I've-
25.3?
Yeah, 25.3.
Yeah.
That's what I've read. So I mean, as far as they are
I mean, they're
concerned-
close to it. Like
Well, yeah, and I'm sure it's
they're
poor
be like
service
22.
and latent and all that other nasty
Yeah.
stuff, and if you know.
But does the state of
butterfly-
Maine agree with that? I mean, that's all that matters.
Right, but just to play the numbers, they can't provide 25 down.
No,
They
I'm
can
sure-
say, "I'll get you
no,
20
that's-
down."
That's what I've heard, but,
Yeah.
I think they qualified Washington and maybe Augusta, I don't know.
I tried to use that
Why
for a
is
while.
it Spectrum doesn't come here?
They don't wanna lay the infrastructure down.
Because,
I don't know. I thought that way back in the day that, I mean, I remember as kids, everybody had different cable and they always griped about it. I didn't know if it was something that the selectmen I thought that selectmen had made a decision to like keep other companies out, but I mean, I was 13 years old at the time.
should we
What did I
talk with Spectrum?
But yeah, I always thought it was curious that it has always been this one company, and they've always been terrible, but they are.
And they're the only
Should
one
we
in
talk with
town, so they-
Spectrum?
Yeah,
Sure. Let's ask.
Yeah, I mean,
But-
it's not gonna hurt anything.
So cable is obviously fiber optic is the gold standard, but cable can reach those speeds.
Yes,
Right.
they can
Okay.
definitely get those speeds.
yeah.
Okay. I mean, there's no harm in inviting them to a future meeting and see if they want to come and chat with us.
Is Spectrum available? I don't even know, are they available here in Lincoln?
Well, that's part of my
No.
question,
Yeah.
I don't.
I've
Yeah.
never heard
I'm not
of
They're
it.
not
a huge fan,
available.
to be honest.
but I don't know why.
Are they in the broader area?
They're in Campbell.
Or in Canton?
Time Warner and Spectrum, are they the same?
Yes, they've
We're
changed
talking about the
their
same
name.
company. Okay.
They're the same.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
they changed their name.
Okay.
I was always under the impression that Spectrum and other people didn't come in because it just would not be worth their while. They don't own the infrastructure, the poles, and so they would have to pay money to Lincolnville Telephone Company to play with their poles.
Yeah,
And then there aren't enough customers in here. This is just too sparse of a rural town to justify all that. That's what I was under that impression.
I doubt they're gonna come to our meeting, but I mean, there's no harm in asking.
yeah.
It's a good question. Who else is out there, you know?
Well, that's what I'd like to know.
Red Zone has partial coverage in town. I know that they can't cover all of the town, but they do cover
It's
parts
line-
of it.
it's
They
line
get
of
blocked
sight.
by mountains and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hatchet Mountain, is that? Hatchet Mountain.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's not really a great, option to cover the rest of Lincolnville.
Right.
Any other questions for Islesboro that you can think of?
Yeah, well, yeah, did we, I'm sorry, did you, in your questions, did you include, so why did you start the process? Why did you even start this dream? I mean, I would like to know why they felt that there was a need. Like, I think.
Let's add that question.
think-
That's,
okay, I didn't know
that's
if
a
it was
pretty
there or
basic
not.
question that we
Yeah, well,
should certainly
because
ask.
they may be in a very similar boat as us.
Yeah.
Even you could read this.
All right. Any other questions? If not, okay, let's move on to action items. So the questions for LCI, and I don't. Do we want to send those beforehand? I mean, the ones about like the map and things still need to prepare. Do we want to hold on to those? Do we want to send some of the questions but not all of them?
I think, you know, asking for the data on the 578 unconnected homes and then more data on that would be a good thing to give them a heads up on. Otherwise, we're not gonna get
Right.
an answer.
Well, why don't I rephrase the question? Are there questions we don't want to ask them? Or give them ahead of time?
Prior
They
to
could
the
just watch this if they wanted, but I don't know if they probably won't, but,
I mean, I don't think I mean, I would like them to be as prepared as they can be, and I don't
yeah.
think that we have anything sneaky or tricky that we are asking of them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's gonna be a better,
Honest questions.
better response if they're not like,
Okay.
Yeah, I don't wanna say anything against, is it gonna be Alan who's gonna be here?
I believe so.
Yeah, okay.
And hopefully
and-
his,
and the
his
engineer, yeah, okay. But I'd kind of like to know that when we ask them, so, for example, what's your actual drop date for CFP, or Connect Main application? That he kind of have something written down, that he could show us, he could say this, and then we'd say, oh yeah, do you mind if we see that? Just because he's in sales, I'm sorry. You're in sales?
I'm not in sales.
Oh, I'm
but
sorry, okay.
I mean,
part of your job,
Yeah.
selling.
I think, yeah, most.
No,
of
it's
them
just,
are,
it's just,
yeah,
it's just a trust and verify paranoia that I got, that's all.
Yeah.
and I really liked whoever suggested that we see the plan, that was a great, I think that was that'd be really good to,
Yeah.
whoever said that, that's like, okay, what is the plan?
You say 4 years, show
The
us.
4-year plan,
How did you
yeah.
come up with
Yeah.
that? Yeah. It seems reasonable to me.
Cause if you know what you're gonna get doing nothing, then that answers the
Right.
question about what do we get if we put money in.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So we've got, as far as the action items as requests for LCI, one is the 4-year plan, we wanna have them come in, and somebody mentioned something else, I think it was you.
I wrote down a couple of things we just said. What's the subsidized program for, is the map updated? Where are the 338 homes? Why are 578 homes unconnected?
What are those addresses?
What are those
And are they-
addresses?
I would like also to know if they're paying, if they're subscription paying people who are getting DSL as well. That, you know, the 500 and something.
What can they do?
Whether they're like not, if they're choosing
can they
no
do?
service at all, or whether they're.
Oh, that would be that's a great
That's
question.
a-
Well, because like I said, between the 540 something and the 300 and whatever,
Right now,
I'm talking about 900 plus households
We're gonna ask.
to really be added to this. So,
Right.
I mean, they keep splitting them into
But
these
there's a few things.
different numbers, and it would be really nice to just nail them down.
Yeah, like how many people in Lincolnville do not have any Lincolnville telephone service
Right.
at all?
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Right,
don't know
right.
that. They know that obviously, so
Mhm.
I don't see why they wouldn't tell us that. Let's see, and I will. So you can reach out to Jeff Parker, so that's easy for a future meeting. I'll have David Kinney reach out to Spectrum to see if they want to come to a later meeting.
I'll call, I meant to do this last time. I'll call Connect Main tomorrow and get the dates and email those around of what the deadlines are for the grants.
Okay, great. Any other action items for other members of the committee?
Well, I kinda like to, I don't know if this qualifies as an action item or not, but get back to the timeline. I mean, the charge gives us a certain time.
Yeah.
Drop dead at January 17th or something like that. The presentation said, okay, so we're looking at May, then is something coming up? It'd be kinda nice to have those, to see where we are
Yeah.
and what we need to get done and in what time.
Well,
I mean, I'd kinda like to ask the select on that, but you're the select one. Yeah.
our committee could also, you know, if we know that the Connect Main application is due on May 31st, and they need to have all the signatures then we can certainly go to the select board. Or I can just ask them and say, hey, we really need this done by this date. Can we give our presentation earlier than June 17th?
Okay.
And I'm sure they'd be happy to have that.
So you're saying it's a good idea if we just basically collect some information while we're in the collect information mode, rather than press for time, to see what our time schedule is, which makes sense to me.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm with you there, yeah, okay.
because if we pass that Connect Main deadline and the next one is in the fall or next year, then why are we doing this?
Yeah, okay, yeah, okay.
Because that's why we're here. Okay, well, let's move on to non-agenda items. Do we have any non-agenda items related to broadband,
think of is like, maybe like Bangor or whoever, what do they use for broadband?
Most everywhere else has Spectrum.
Yeah.
They've got quite a monopoly on it.
Cause I'm just trying to
In most
dig
of,
and
of,
figure
of
out
the
what
state.
else is there.
Anywhere that's built up at all, for sure.
Doesn't
And
seem
Bangor
like
is
a lot of
fairly
choice.
metropolitan compared to Lincolnville or parts of the mid-coast.
Mhm.
I mean, I know when I lived in Portland, it was all, I mean,
Well, Osboro has GWI, right? Isn't that who they have?
And that is DSL or?
They provide DSL. I think that's also the company who services, their fiber.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, do we want to schedule, so we have our next meeting on April 2nd. Is it helpful to schedule the one after that, since we're all here in one room?
Yeah.
works for me, yeah.
We're down 2 people, but okay.
What's the Wi-Fi in the town? You know, you
In,
know what the Wi-Fi password thing?
it's not open? I- Should be open. Toll guest. Okay, so do we wanna meet in 2 weeks, in 3 weeks, in a month?
So, the second.
Every other week.
I'm personally very happy to meet in 2 weeks. I think we can use all the time we can get. So that would
Yeah.
be April 16th, a Thursday.
Okay, I can't do that, but you can go without me. Can we do the Thursday after that,
We could, yeah.
which is?
The,
let's see,
so the 23rd. How does that work for everyone?
Works fine.
I may be away, depending on what is happening.
Yeah, I might be away.
Do you wanna do
Depending
it,
on what's happening also.
do you wanna do it?
Hoping I'm gonna be away.
Do you wanna do it earlier that week before, like either the Wednesday or the
Because-
Tuesday, the 15th?
I mean, whatever works
Does
for
it have to be Thursday?
everybody,
Right, that's what I'm
you
saying.
know.
Thursdays.
It might be tricky to get every single person, but.
Yeah. Let me hold on before we.
Never happens.
I know.
Yeah.
Let me go to the Town of Lincolnville website and see what other meetings are happening.
Yeah, I don't know when.
There's always that room too, so I don't think it's very often that both rooms are taken. But
We could do something early the week of the 13th, 14th, 15th. Is that week better for you than the next week?
Yeah,
I just couldn't do the 16th, but any
Yeah.
other day that week's fine.
what about the 15th? Wednesday the 15th.
that's fine with me.
That works for me. Okay.
Same
I,
time?
I think we can do that. Like we're allowed to do that.
Same time?
7 o'clock. Yeah. And I will let David Kinney know as soon as possible and just make sure that's fine. It should be fine. I don't see anything on the
It's
schedule.
tax day.
It is tax day. Although I think they might be pushing that, the US government, so.
It could be extension, that's like,
Okay, great. All right, if there's nothing else, does anyone wanna make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor? Great, thank you everyone. Where did we go in signing this? My nomination.
That's
papers.
fine.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So I was so desperate for, you know, good fiber optic